Should you get the Bravia 8 or the A80L from Sony? And will you go with the bigger A80L or a little bit smaller Bravia 8? Should you even have to make that decision? Well, I think that, it's always probably good to go with the bigger TV if you can, if they are very close. And let's take a look at how close they really are in this video. Now, when we're looking at the Bravia 8 versus the A80L, a couple of things really stuck out to me right away. Like, one thing was clear, the game mode was a night and day difference, and I'll have to talk about that in a little bit. But let's start out with some general things like what changed with the menu system and how that's different from the A80L to the Bravia 8. Now, full disclosure before we begin, the 65-inch A80L to the right, that was gifted to me by Sony last year, and the 55-inch Bravia 8 to the left, I actually bought that one myself. Sony didn't send that one through. Just so we're clear on how I acquired these TVs, I always think that is important for people to know. Now, as far as the features and the menu system with the Bravia 8 versus the A80L, the Bravia 8 is much like the A95L of last year. If you're familiar with that menu system, it's pretty much the same. There's more features on the Bravia 8 than the A80L. Some more exclusive things that came to the Bravia 8 this year, and the A80L won't have those features. In the menu system itself, you can see the A80L is retaining what was available with the A80K and the A80J before it, and you have the A95L's kind of menu system on the Bravia 8, as you can see here. And there's a little bit of a difference in like changing certain settings. So like, for example, with the Bravia 8, if you want to turn off the ambient optimization, you're going to have to go into picture and sound options instead of going through the picture settings menu on the A80L to do it. So there is some differences there. When it comes down to it being a TV for your streaming services, it's pretty similar though across the board. They both use the Google OS and they both seem to operate it very similarly. So not too much difference there. As far as the sound goes, I'm judging a 65-inch A80L versus a 55-inch Bravia 8. I do think that the Bravia 8 that I have sounds a little bit weaker than the A80L, but I'm thinking that may just be size, and it sounds a little bit different in terms of the directional output of the TV. Like the A80L definitely feels a bit more bass heavy, where the Bravia 8 seems to be a little bit more treble heavy. So this might come down to screen size, to be honest with you. So this might not be a fair comparison to make. But I did see that there is specification differences regarding the sound, and I have put that up on the screen right here. Now, when it comes down to color between these two TVs, they are definitely different. I am noticing some differences in a lot of scenes where I'm not sure which one is exactly correct because I don't have a reference monitor in front of me, but I'm seeing some odd colors from the Bravia 8 at times where the A80L looks like it would be a little bit more spot on with colors. And I do have another TV next to it to kind of get and judge off of that. But again, I don't know because these TVs are not accurate. I don't have them professionally calibrated. So I couldn't tell you which one is going to give you the best colors. But I do think so far from what I'm seeing, I like what I'm seeing out of the A80L with colors a little bit better than the Bravia 8. Now, that's just in terms of how colors look. In terms of like color brightness, the A80L is not as good as the Bravia 8 in that area. So the Bravia 8 does retain colors in higher brightness levels a lot better than the A80L is what I noticed personally. But again, I do stress that at times I see colors that seem to be a bit off on the Bravia 8 where the A80L definitely looks a little bit more spot on. So that's just a perception that I have when watching these two TVs. When we get to the topic of HDR tone mapping, the behavior of it, the Bravia 8 does seem to act different. It does retain highlights a little bit better, where I think the A80L will clip a little bit sooner. Probably because the Bravia 8 is a more capable TV. It is said to be a little bit brighter than the A80L by Sony themselves. So I am actually seeing this in a lot of content when they are side by side, so that's good that it's living up to that claim. There are a few scenes where the Bravia 8 doesn't look as bright as the A80L, but I have seen so many scenes already, where the Bravia 8 is the brighter TV overall and the more impactful TV overall. In fact, the Bravia 8 gets the brightness levels that the A80L can't get to. But in certain content, the A80L actually looks brighter than the Bravia 8 because of the way that the tone mapping is on these TVs, from what I noticed anyway. All right, now let's get into game mode and let's start with the game options menu. So yeah, the only thing different with the game mode picture options is going to have the added picture profiles. Other than that, it's pretty much similar there. But the actual picture quality within game mode, well, that's different for sure. Like, look at the Bravia 8, it looks fantastic. I think it's more impactful for HDR gaming, and SDR gaming is better on it as well. So this is a big step up, in my opinion, going to the Bravia 8 from the A80L in regards to game mode. It just seems like the better overall TV, the more capable TV when it comes down to game mode. Performance wise, they're very similar. They both have access to really great things like reality creation within game mode, which can be a very nice improvement. But if you're looking for the better picture quality overall, the brighter, the more impactful one, it's definitely the Bravia 8 here, as you can see on the screen. Now, one thing I do find different with the Bravia 8 is the way that it handles blacks, and I'm looking at the A80L here. It does seem like Sony handles it the way they used to handle it with all their other OLED TVs, like the A80J. One thing I pointed out with that is that, like, you play something like Resident Evil, you'll be able to see in the shadows better. It's not going to be as scary to play. Where you play it on something like a LG OLED, and you're going to be presented with less shadow detail, but it's also going to be like, okay, I'm not supposed to see into those shadows. So it does seem like maybe you see a little bit more than you're supposed to with the Sony OLEDs. But the Bravia 8, this is not really the case. This performs more like an LG OLED in this regard. So it's going to be something you have to pick to see which one you like better preference wise. Some people like a little bit more shadow detail, so it really just depends on what you want out of your TV in that regard. But I did notice that the Bravia 8 does crush a little bit at times. It gives me the perception that the TV has better black levels. And I know that's kind of crazy to say because they're both OLED TVs, but it does feel like the Bravia 8 just does it better. Now, I personally feel that the Bravia 8 has so many improvements over the A80L, where if they're close in price, I buy the Bravia 8 over the A80L pretty much most of the time. And I would say that, yeah, the color could be a little bit better on the Bravia 8. And maybe that's something that you can play around with and get the color to look a little bit better for you. You know, you do have things like live color, so you do have a lot of options available to play with the color. And of course, you know, I always recommend playing with different settings just to see what works the best for you. You never know until you actually try something. So just, you know, give it a shot. The Bravia 8 is an easy recommendation for me when it is a certain price level. So if it can get to that price level where it makes sense for you budget wise, I do like the TV. I think it's a fantastic TV. I think the A80L is a fantastic TV. But the Bravia 8 is just better in my eyes. What do you guys think? Tell me in the comments below. Do you see a big improvement with the Bravia 8 from the A80L? And let me know, do you go with the cheaper, bigger TV, or would you sacrifice some size to get better picture quality out of your TV? I'd love to hear you guys' answer. If you guys want to keep watching comparisons, check out this one right here. I think you'll like it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.